Hey guys, so for today's video, I'm going to be doing the ceramic nail trend that has been going around here lately. I have been really loving these nails and I wanted to try it out myself. So to start off, I'm just taking the white from Ball Pit and painting all of the nails with this. I did only do one coat of this and I cured that for 60 seconds. The only reason why I did one coat of this is because this polish is a one coat coverage polish anyways, so I didn't really feel like I needed to do a second coat, but also because I was going to be doing some like 3D stuff on there, as well as putting like a sheer or like jelly type of polish over top of it, and I didn't really feel like I needed it to be like super perfect of a layer either, so I didn't feel like I really needed to do a second coat for both of those reasons. So for the designs on the nails, I'm using the white 3D embossing gel from Madame Glam, just because I already have this and I felt like it was going to work well. But I did see a tutorial on Instagram that she mixed in gel polish and acrylic powder to get like a thick kind of paste to create the 3D or the designs on the nail. So you could do that if you don't have embossing gel. I feel like you could probably also mix up like white gel polish and rhinestone glue, or like any kind of thicker type of gel in order to do this. You really just need something that's going to give you that 3D raised effect for this. So anyway you do that, I feel like you could go about doing that. But since I have this embossing gel, I felt like it was going to be super easy to do this with, and I wasn't going to have to mix anything up. So that's why I am using this. And I'm just going in and doing my designs. I know it's really kind of hard to see because it's white on white. You can kind of see it. Also, my phone camera tends to have a difficult time like clearly picking up really light colors, especially white, and sometimes like light yellows and like pastel colors. So all of that's kind of making it a little difficult to see, but I am just going in doing my design on that one nail. I did some stars. I did 2 stars on that, and then on this nail here I am doing a flower. So for the stars, I just painted them onto the nail and then cured them. But for the flower, because I wanted the like middle part of the flower and the petals to be like kind of separated from each other instead of like flowing into each other, I did go ahead and do the middle part of the flower and then flash cure that so it stayed in place, and then went in and did the petals. And then after I got the petals on, I did go ahead and cure that. And I do cure for a full 60 seconds after getting my designs on. I was looking at some ceramic tiles that I found like from Pinterest for reference for some of these, like for the star nails. I was looking at a reference for that. I was also looking at a reference for the butterfly nail that I'm gonna do, as well as the octopus nail. The only one that I really wasn't looking at a reference for was this flower. Like, I had found the star, butterfly, and octopus tiles on Pinterest, and then I wasn't really feeling very many of the other tiles that I was seeing on there. They just seemed a little more complicated than what I was wanting to do for this set, since it was my first time doing this. I didn't really want to do something that was super hard and complicated and had like a lot of details in it, because I wasn't really sure how this was going to work or if it even was going to work out for me. So I did kind of just want to keep it a little more simple, although I will say the butterfly and the octopus were a little more difficult and complicated than just doing some stars and a flower. For this flower, it is kind of small. I could have done this flower way bigger on this nail, or if I wanted to do them small like this, I could have done 2 flowers like how I did on the star nail and did 2 stars instead of just 1. And then here I am doing the butterfly nail. I feel like with this one you can see a little better what I'm doing compared to the flower nail and the star nail. But this embossing gel, I really like it. I only used it a few times. They do have a black one and a white one. And they sent these to me quite a while ago, like when they first released these to like review and share with everyone on like YouTube and stuff. But I do really enjoy these and I really like these. I wish they would come out with more colors though. I mean, black and white is great and there are a lot of like things you can do with them, but I do wish they would come out with more colors to do. So like you could do 3D stuff in like all the different colors instead of having to, you know, mix up your own colors with like acrylic powder or rhinestone glue or whatever. It would just make things a whole lot easier. But so yeah, they do only have the two colors of white and black, and they are really nice. Sometimes they tend to have a mind of their own and they're a little tricky to work with, especially if it's your first time using them. They can be a little finicky, but if you practice with it, then you get used to using them and like maneuvering them around. It definitely does like cling to itself really well. So when I'm like connecting the pieces together or like different lines together, like it sticks really well to itself, and it's a little hard to like keep the lines separate. You'll see that more in like what I'm trying to say here when I do the octopus nail. Especially when I like do the tentacles. You'll see like I'm trying to keep the tentacles pretty separate, but then like they kind of like just kind of stick to each other and like cling to each other a little bit where I don't want them to be. So I did have to redo that nail a couple times to get it how I wanted it. But they're not, the gels are super thick, but they're not, I mean, they're not like super thick, but they are pretty thick. Obviously you want that since they are 3D, meant for like 3D elements and stuff. But they do level out pretty well. They don't level out so much that they go completely flat, but they do level out a bit. So like you can see like where I'm connecting certain lines together, it sometimes does create like a little peak, and that will like level out that little peak, so it's like a smooth finished line instead of being on the lumpier side or have those sharp little peaks on it. But like I said, it doesn't level out so much that the lines go completely flat. And it's super easy to build on top of this. So if you do want it to be more 3D, because just doing one layer, depending on how thick you put it on, it won't be super raised off the nail. And that's something that's really good about this. Like you can manipulate it and work with it to make your 3D elements be a little more flat or be more raised up. You can also do multiple layers to make 3D and raised up from the nails if you would like to do that. Also, you can use chrome powders with these, so if you want like 3D chrome elements, you can use these. I tested it out whenever I did receive these. I can't remember exactly if you have to cure it the full time in order for the chrome to work, or if you have to cure it for like half the time or like 15 seconds or something. I remember I tested it out, but I can't remember like what the results were of that. If you really want to know, you can go back and find that video and check that out. But you can use chrome with these. They do, when they cure, they don't have oh my gosh, they don't have a sticky layer to them, so that's why they work really well with chrome. You also don't have to top coat them if you do this as your final step. Like you could top coat the nail and then put this on top, and then you don't have to top coat these. Although I always recommend top coating stuff, like any nail art that you put on your nail, even if it is like a no wipe type of gel. I still recommend top coating it just to protect it a little bit and to keep it from like wearing down, or like, you know, making sure that it keeps that shine. Or if you're trying to make it matte, you know, obviously you're gonna need to top coat it. They do cure a little more on the shiny side, but they're not as shiny as like if you were to put a top coat on top of them. But you don't, like I said, you don't have to top coat them because they are non-wipe and do cure without that sticky layer. So here's that octopus nail that I was talking about with the tentacles and like the this 3D embossing gel like sticking and like clinging to itself. I know it, like I said earlier, it is a little difficult to see, but you can still kind of see it. How like up near the top where the tentacles are attached to like the rest of the octopus body, they kind of like melt into each other, which was fine. It wasn't really that big of a deal. But then you can see, I think on like these two down here that I'm like working on, kind of, they continue connecting for a ways down, and it was looking like if one tentacle got like cut in half, and that wasn't what I was wanting this to look like. I definitely wanted you to be able to distinctly see each and every single tentacle on its own, instead of, like I said, looking like one tentacle got cut in half. So I was having to be very careful to make sure that they weren't, like, the gel wasn't close to each other, like each tentacle wasn't super close to each other to where it could kind of like flow into each other and like pull or like pool into each other, if that makes any kind of sense. So I just had to leave a little bit of extra space than what I would have left if I were to have just been painting on with like a normal white liner gel. Going back to mixing, like color mixing and wanting different colors of this gel, I wonder if you could mix in like different colored gel polishes into this gel and like get different colors. Well, you'd have to mix it into the white because you're not really gonna, unless you want to make a color darker. But also, I don't know if that would really work. I feel like it would thin it out because like the gel polish is a lot thinner than this, and I feel like adding that into this would end up thinning it out. I don't know. You could probably mix in pigments maybe. That's something I want to try out now that I'm like thinking about it. But anyhow, back to the nail and what I'm doing here. I did have to redo this octopus a few times. I do show me redoing it or doing it twice here on the video. I think after this attempt, I did do it off camera because I was struggling a little bit. That first attempt, I started with the head and then went in with the tentacles, and now this time I'm trying to start with the tentacles and then do the head, and I felt like it was working out pretty well until I added the head on, and I didn't leave enough space for the head. So instead of it being like a nice big round head, it was kind of smushed and a little more ovally than what I was wanting. So when I did wipe this off and redo it, I did again start with the head and then went in with the tentacles, and it ended up doing really well. Sometimes you have to do a design a few times to get it right. Sometimes I show myself redoing it all the times that I redo it. Sometimes I only show you like one time I did it and then I have to redo it about 100 times off camera. But you know, that's how it is sometimes with nail art. Also, I'm using a new liner brush that I have. It is a 9mm liner brush. It's from Ball Pit. It's the Little Miss 9mm liner brush. And it's a little bit of a thicker brush. It's not super thin like the Nails by Dev Deadly Detailer 9mm that I usually use, which actually came in really handy for this set because I was able to scoop up more product with this brush instead of like constantly having to dip back into the pot to load up the brush every time you turn around. So that was really nice to have this brush. So here what I am doing is going in and doing a second layer. I did end up doing a second layer of this gel on all of the designs because I did want them to be raised up a little more to kind of give more of a 3D effect. Like I said, the one layer, like, it is easy to build, and like one layer is pretty like it's raised up off the nail, but it's not like super thick and super 3D like you typically see when someone's doing 3D elements. So I did want it to be a little thicker when it came to this. So I did just go in, do a second layer on all of the nails, and I did cure that second layer again for a full 60 seconds. And like I said, it clings to itself really well. And typically gel sticks to gel no matter what. But this does stick to itself really well. And like the two layers melded together really well. I have had in the past times where like I would do a second layer to make something more 3D, and it was like obvious I did multiple layers to get it more 3D, which is not all that great of a look, and you kind of have to finesse it a little more, have to do a little bit of filing to kind of get it to look somewhat decent, or just paint over it so you can't see the different layers. But with this, you can't see those different layers. Like I said, it melts into itself really nicely, and it does look like you did this one big giant glob. I don't think I showed myself doing the second layer on all of them, just on this flower here, because that was kind of a long process to go through and do all of those 3D elements. But after I got that second layer on, I'm just taking this base coat here. I got this off of Amazon. I have a ton of these because the top coat used to be my favorite top coat. It is still one of my favorite top coats. Super shiny, long-lasting shine. It doesn't get dull after a couple weeks or so, like some top coats do. But I have a ton of these base coats. That's why I'm using this. Well, that's one reason why I'm using it, is because I have a ton of these base coats and I'm trying to use them up because I don't really use base coat very often, and I don't use very much of it because it just goes on like my natural nails or even like on my toenails when I paint them. So I'm not using very much base coat, and I have a lot that I'm just trying to go through. So I am using base coat to mix it in. I'm also using base coat because it does still have that tacky layer, and I was afraid if I mixed these colors in with top coat that it could potentially end up separating or peeling apart from each other. Not that it really mattered for this set because it is a press-on set, but I was thinking like, you know, longevity wise, like putting a top coat on or painting on top of a top coat, like a shiny top coat, can because it is super smooth, can potentially end up leading to whatever you paint on top of it to peel off, which is so weird because gel, you know, sticks to gel. But like I've had issues with like stuff not wanting to stick onto the shiny top coat once it's cured. So I wanted to make sure that, like, you know, it was all going to stick to each other. So that's why I went with the base coat, because it does have that sticky layer and that kind of helps to stick it together, I guess. But anyhow, I'm just mixing in some different colors into the clear here. I did Boss Battle and Game Over from Nails by Dev for that pink, not pink, purple and blue color. And then for the pink here, I used Garden Hoe from Ball Pit. And then for the yellow color, I mixed together Orange Blossom and Sunbeam from Ball Pit because I felt like the yellow that I had, like that Sunbeam yellow, was not too yellow, but it wasn't going to give like the color payoff that I wanted, because you can see here it is a pretty like pastel kind of yellow. It's not like super pastel, but it is a lighter yellow, and I just felt like it wasn't going to give me the color payoff that I wanted by mixing it into the clear polish here, because I am shearing them out and making them be like jelly polishes. So I did just want to mix a little bit of orange into it to give it a little bit more pigment and make it a little bit of a darker yellow instead of being like a super light or like brighter type of yellow, if that makes sense. With this, you could also just use like a plain old normal jelly polish instead of mixing up your own, but the jelly colors that I have weren't like, I have these colors. I have a purple, a blue, a pink, and a yellow jelly gel polish, but they weren't the shades that I was wanting for this. I wanted them to be a little more pastel and a little more muted, I guess. Whereas like the jelly gel polishes that I have are a little brighter, a little more like neon, have a little bit more pigment to them. I did want these colors to be more of like a wash, kind of like if you were to glaze ceramic or like pottery or something. It is more of a wash and you have to do like multiple layers to get the full color payoff for it, you know. So that's why I went about like mixing up my own colors. Like I said, you don't have to mix up your own colors when doing this, but you can if you want. And now I'm just taking this gel applicator brush and applying it to the entire nail. So I'm doing the yellow for the stars. And when I did this, I was putting quite a bit of pressure on it and like really pushing down on it to spread the gel polish around. Also, you see me going in both directions to try and get the gel polish to pool on those designs there, because that really helps with that ceramic glazed type of look. So when you do something like this, if you don't want pooling, you want to pull away from your 3D design. So like on the bottom of that flower, like starting up by the flower and pulling down to the free edge is going to prevent the pooling, but then going the opposite way and starting at the free edge and pulling towards the flower is going to create that pooling effect. And then it's really easy on this butterfly to get the pooling effect like in the wings and on the veining and everything, because it just kind of all sits there. It doesn't really have anywhere to go. And then after I got the first layer of color on, I did go ahead and cure that for 60 seconds. And then I did do a second layer on all of them because I did want a little more color payoff and like pigment on the nails, because as you can see, the one layer is pretty sheer. It leaves like a super light wash of color on the nails, and I could have left it like that. I was really liking how it looked like that, but I also really wanted some more color on these nails, so that is why I did a second coat. You can do like multiple different coats, like to get it to look however you want it to look and be as pigmented and as like opaque, but not fully opaque, if you get what I'm trying to say. Also, that girl that I mentioned at the beginning of the video who posted a tutorial on how to do this set, she went about it a little bit differently than I did when it came to painting the nails. She like used a liner brush and like put the gel polish in like specific places. That is another way to do it. I don't know if I did a very good job explaining that. You can go on her Instagram and watch her tutorial if you want to see how she did it. How she did it looks really well, and she did a fantastic job. Like hers looked so good and so like realistic. Like they actually looked like tiny pieces of ceramic tiles, which was super cool. I feel like mine didn't really have that effect super well, but it does kind of give like the same effect as a ceramic tile. But anyhow, if you want to try it out her way, you can obviously do that. Like go see her video and see doing it that way. But I just felt like this was a little bit easier and a little bit quicker, especially for like someone new to doing nails or like a beginner, if they wanted to test out doing this instead of like doing, you know, intricate details and like placing the polish very specifically in specific spots and whatever, and like doing all those layers. You could just take some jelly polish and just brush it on the entire nail and still get that ceramic tile effect. After I got those 2 layers of gel polish on, I am now taking my shiny top coat from LGN. This is my absolute favorite top coat that I have tried. It is a thick top coat, which I personally prefer a thick top coat, but it is also super shiny, and the shine is so long lasting. I do wear my nails, like whenever I do my own nails, I do wear them for about 3 to 4 weeks, depending on when I actually get them done and when I do have time to redo them. But I do usually wear them for about 3 to 4 weeks, and the shine lasts the entire time. So how you see it when it's freshly cured is how it looks the entire time that it is on. I also dye my hair a lot, and I use like semi-permanent colors, although right now I'm not currently using a semi-permanent color, but that's another story. But I have noticed that it doesn't stain. So if I do get the hair dye on my nails, which is common when you dye your hair and you wash it and whatever, it comes right off. Like it doesn't stain. And I've used some pretty insane colors. Like I've done semi-permanent black, I've done red, I have permanent red hair dye right now in my hair, and you know, red is super prone to staining. Blues and purples and like dark blues and purples, I mean, I've also done lighter colors, which lighter colors like yellows and greens and like a lighter shade of blue or a lighter shade of purple don't typically stain as bad. It's definitely the darker colors and like reds and pinks that stain pretty badly. And I've never had an issue with staining when it came to this top coat. So if you are someone that dyes their hair frequently, or even if you're a hairdresser that you know, works with hair dye, I definitely recommend this top coat because you're not gonna have any staining. At least I haven't had any staining in my experience. But this is the finished result. I'm super happy with how these nails came out. I will say some parts on some of these, like specifically the butterfly, like the veining on the wings and some of the tentacles on the octopus did lose a little bit of that 3D effect on him once I added that top coat on. But that wasn't really a big deal for me. Like, majority of it is super raised and 3D. Also, because of all the pooling around it, you can tell that it was like raised and 3D. So like I said, it wasn't really that big of a deal for me. But I did try to keep the layer of top coat pretty thin to keep them as like 3D designs instead of like trying to flatten them out. But yeah, I am really happy with how they look. They do look like ceramic tiles. I do feel like I could have done a little bit better of a job, or like, you know, attempted the other girl's technique of painting it to make it look a little more like a ceramic tile. But also, I'm really happy with how this looks, and I do still feel like it gives a really good ceramic tile effect on the nails. And it was super quick, super easy to do it that way instead of like, you know, spending a lot of time like intricately painting everything. I could just do like a quick little wash of color over the entire nail and it was good. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.